Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series on the Mr. FPGA DE10 Nano project, and I did not plan to do a Friday video for the Nintendo 64 core. I was going to wait till tomorrow and do a testing video, but around 1:20 this afternoon, 3 hours ago, Robert or FPGA Zoomspas uploaded a new core with new VI implementation features, so I figured let's see if we could get it done today. So hopping right back into Mario, a great game to test because everyone knows what it looks like. Divot is not a gigantic feature, but what it does so well. It fundamentally does improve the image quality of this game. And this is going to be a testing video as well, some of your requests, so stay tuned for those. I'm going to incorporate both. If you take a look at these spinning coins here, if we go into the menu and you scroll down on the new core as of today, you're going to see Divot on or off. If we turn it off, some pixels that shouldn't be there start appearing. And I'm actually going to zoom in so you can take a look at the shadow underneath the coin. Look at that white pixel to the right of it. If I come in here and turn Divot on and we go back into that zoom in, you're going to see the shadow is much more consistent and it blends in with the texture on the floor. It's a small example, but it makes the image fundamentally better. But go ahead and take a look at this banister right here and the white posts coming out of them. Watch the edges as I turn Divot on and off. You're going to see that they get a little bit shadowier and a little bit chunkier. Divot on is going to be as close as you can possibly get the Nintendo 64 hardware image on real hardware at this point in time, but I love that we can just basically toggle every option on or off. We can literally turn all of the VI pipeline and other effects off to get to an image that looks like this for Super Mario 64. But moving on to Gex 3, this was a request from a lot of you and it made me happy because I do really enjoy the Gex games, and it seems like you do too because you have been asking for this one. And the last time we tested this, it was on a much earlier core and it definitely was not running at full speed even with the cache on for the CPU. Now this looks, plays, sounds, and feels exactly like Gex 3. I own it on Nintendo 64 and PlayStation 1. I was a huge Gex fan back in the day and I still think it's a pretty good 3D platformer. But with all of the VI effects and all of the other effects turned on, this looks exactly like a Nintendo 64, but the best part is with all of these different toggles, there's more than one way to look at Gex and more than one way to play Gex, and I think they actually both have their own unique properties that make them both better and worse than each other. So in the next scene I'm going to show you as I turn options on and off and you get a chance to look at what's going on. But that is the fundamentally amazing thing about this core, is we get the option to do whatever we would like. As you come in here, you're going to see all the effects are turned on. You got that Nintendo 64 Vaseline look. If you were playing on real hardware, this is what it would look like if you had an RGB mod or an HDMI mod. But if we come into the options menu in just a moment, we can start articulating different things to get different settings. The first thing, just play around with Divot and anti-aliasing. Those boards on the floor are going to get wider or narrower. And with anti-aliasing and Divot on, they start to look exactly as they should. But we can basically turn a lot of things off and we now have a very pixelated Gex, but I think this also is a very good image. That's the fun part about these settings. You can turn them on, you can turn them off, you can play around with them. Every single option is a good option and you can make the game look like what you want it to look like. You can go for the original Nintendo 64 Vaseline look, or you can turn it off completely and get a much sharper, much more pixelated image out of Mister. And those options, what I love so much about this core, it gives you the ability to dial in what you think looks right. And that's the awesome thing. Giving people options is always fun, and we now get a piece of hardware that does both what the Nintendo 64 did visually, and also allows you to make it look exactly like it should not in a very fun way. But a lot of you guys also asked for Pokemon Snap 2. The last time we looked at this game, the intro had a little bit of weirdness to it, but now it is rock solid with the current updates and the updates that have come before it. And it's another game where we can look at the different visual features and decide what we like and what we don't like. And leave me a comment down below. Tell me if you're team everything on or if you're team heavy pixelated. There's always a different option. It seems like most people are now hewing towards having all of the filters implemented because it does remind them more of a Nintendo 64. And with everything on right now, you can just see that this image has that blurriness and a little bit of smear to it, but the text still is legible. That is what the Nintendo 64 looked like if you run original hardware, and that is what the core can now look like as well with all of these options on. But I will say that the sound in this is awesome as well. Last time we looked at it, the sound was a little bit glitchy. It is now absolutely perfect, so go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds or so, and I'll come back and show you more features and more games that just work.
Look! Fire blast! That had to hurt! It went down as soon as the battle started! Will this turn into a one-sided battle? Oh, it's Teddy Ursa! And number of remaining Pokemon is 3 to 2. This battle's outcome is still far from certain. Combatants face each other.
Sounds good, and those voice samples are going to be muffled if you play on original hardware as well. But now let's go into the settings and start turning some things off. We've seen what it looks like if you're trying to emulate that classic Nintendo 64 look, but if we turn everything but texture filtering off, we now have this really sharp texture, we have the lack of the blurriness in the image, and it is more grainy, but I think this is also a really good look for Pokemon Snap 2. Tell me down below which one you prefer. I think both are very applicable as to what you might want to see coming out of your television, and if you're on a CRT versus an LCD, you might want to turn options on or off depending on the actual television you're using, but having that freedom to play around and articulate with the image is where a lot of the fun is here. It's like having a Nintendo 64 that's got a bunch of dip switches on the front that you can turn on or off in real time to enable or disable certain parts of the Nintendo 64 hardware, which is exactly what the FPGA core is currently doing, and it's so fun to watch that. Now, all of you have been asking to see more footage of Body Harvest to see how it's improving or not, and I will say, at least on the intro side, this seems to be running totally fine. You get this nice intro here, it's a really fun story, it's got some good 3D animations, and it seems to be full speed, at least as far as I can remember, but it's been a very long time since I played Body Harvest, so tell me down below if I am incorrect. And it does have a creepy factor as well. This dude is just walking away, bleeding, and there's going to be a monster that follows behind him because he has the scent of blood. For a Nintendo 64 game, it's actually relatively mature, definitely not by today's standards, but it always kind of struck me as being something you didn't often see on the system. But with all of the different VI effects turned on, this has that really nice soft look that sells the Nintendo 64 illusion as to what we remember it looking like when we're using real hardware. But this bug here finds your blood on the ground, he drags his little tentacle, whatever the hell that is, through it, and he's definitely going to be looking for you. Now, interestingly enough, when you get into the game, the frame rate absolutely tanks. It is running faster than the last time we took a look at it, but calling it fast would be a misnomer. This is still definitely a bit of a slideshow. We just need to wait for more cores to fix more situations so that we can continue to test more games. There's like 80% plus of the North American library currently playable, and this game would definitely classify as playable because you can get into the game and play it. But just so you know, when you think about playable, sometimes it's not going to be a perfect experience, but it will be interesting once this gets fixed to talk about what actually was the root cause of this frame rate being lower than you would expect. But it does work, it is faster than last time we checked, and so many people asked to see more footage of this game, I didn't want to not include it in the video, even though it's not a game that I would recommend you play today. There's so many awesome games that just work on the current core, but if you want to check this one out, just be aware that it's running slow, and it's not just your mister, it is just how the core is currently functioning. Now, moving on to another game you guys have asked to see more footage of, and it's really good for all the current tests today, it's going to be Extreme G. At the start, I'm running this with all the VI implementations on, and I will show you on screen when I change them. But I would say with all of the Vaseline, blur, and otherwise over the image, it is a really clean, nice looking thing. Because even though this game moves fast, and it can be hard to notice fine details in games that do run fast, visually like this, you can 100% tell the blur is on. You can see it on the track, you can see it on the textures of all of the different things we're driving underneath and through. It really does sell the illusion of having that blur that the Nintendo 64 was famous for. But the thing about that is we can also go into the options menu and start toggling things around and seeing what they look like when we're actually at that speed. But this is another great game to show what divot and anti-aliasing really do. So what we're going to do is just come up here and we're going to pause the game on some foliage so you can see it better. Take a look at that tree on the right hand side of the screen. If we turn divot off, it's going to start looking like it has pixels coming through it. The blending is not correct there. Divot fixes all of that. If we turn that off and then go up to anti-aliasing and turn it off as well, you're going to see that that tree gets a little bit thicker and a little bit less appealing. But if we take everything off and just start running through the game, you're going to see that it still looks really good. We've taken everything but the texture filtering off, and while it is a lot more pixelated, it is still a good look in my opinion, and that's because it's moving so fast it can be really hard to tell what you're looking at sometimes. But I do like a little bit of the sharpness in the corners, let you see where you're going a little bit more. But this game also has an epic soundtrack, so what I'm going to do is let you listen to 30 seconds or so, but come right back because I got many more games to show you. The music just sounds really good. Now, I don't know why, but all of you keep asking to see more Daikatana footage out there. There must be a lot of fans for this game, or you're just all trolling me and want to see me suffer a tiny bit. All jokes aside, it's not the best game in the world. The Nintendo 64 port is definitely not the best way to play Daikatana. But with all of the features in here, this has a really nice look to it. It doesn't help the game mechanically whatsoever, but all of the blur, all of the dimple, all of the anti-aliasing really make a nice image in Daikatana. But the fun part is we can also just basically turn around in this level and see what is behind us. What I'm going to do is basically de-implement all of the different things we just had enabled, and I'm going to run back the exact opposite direction. So we'll just come into the menu. This is how quick in real time you can change these settings, and I'll go ahead and run back through the level. You're going to see that we now have these big chunky pixels, and while this is not what Daikatana was supposed to look like on the Nintendo 64 core, it also, I think, is a very pleasing image. And that is the fun in this thing. You can really dial in whatever it is you feel like, level to level, minute to minute, game to game. You get to choose, but tell me down below, blurry Daikatana or pixelated Daikatana, or just no Daikatana whatsoever. That would be my vote. But hey, if you like it, I'm happy for you, and you'll see here from pixels to absolutely smooth and just a few toggles in the on-screen display, and it's so much fun to see. But let's pop over to NFL Blitz, because this is another one that absolutely everyone keeps asking about, and I 100% understand it. Not only is it a really fun pivot on the football game itself, but this is just an absolute blast as a party game. I played so much of this with friends back in the day, and I'm 100% going to continue to play it on the current core. Last time we looked at it, we didn't have any of the plays actually on the menu screen. It was completely blank, but that was about 6 weeks ago. Now today you can see that the game is running, it looks good. It is definitely still difficult against the CPU. It's not going to give you any leeway whatsoever. It wants you to die and it wants you to lose, but it's going to let you have a lot of fun, and it 100% just looks like a Nintendo 64 game. This core is doing so well right now with all the visual implementations and core improvements. It would be very difficult to be able to tell whether or not you were using real Nintendo 64 hardware if you didn't know you were watching a Mr. Video. But all of the different VI implementations and other features are just absolutely wild. Watch Mario just run around this little turret here. This is with everything enabled. Then I'm just going to go ahead and crossfade to a source where everything is disabled, and you can see just how different the image is, but just how fun both of them truly are. That's the great thing right now, is that we get all of these options. We can run around, we can turn them on, we can turn them off. FPGA Zoom Spots has given us the keys to the kingdom, pun very much intended, because we're playing a Mario game, and we just get to decide whatever it is we want to do with how the image looks. Whatever looks good to you at that moment in time is 100% what you should be doing, but we now have the ultimate freedom to make this look exactly like a Nintendo 64, or look like something that has absolutely no resemblance to Nintendo 64 outside of the games itself. But happy Friday, everyone. We have a new Nintendo 64 core to go into the weekend with, and I hope FPGA Zoom Spots takes the weekend off himself so I can just play this and enjoy it versus making videos. All jokes aside, I love doing this, and I enjoy you guys watching each and every one of them. If you have any requests for future videos as far as games to be tested, leave them down below. I love getting to each and every one of them. But short of that, it is now Friday, and I'm going to go turn my computer off, have a drink, and enjoy the weekend. Enjoy your Nintendo 64 playtime on Mr., and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.